We've got Hayley T. Wheeler and Tammy Foley with us, where we've just finished a conversation about being a young person in 2024, finding your sense of identity, finding yourself, and the kind of the pitfalls that go along with that. Anna King joined us just to talk there about finding your reality by getting into getting dirty and exploring the world and getting out there. And Tammy, I'm sure that's sentiment that you would agree with.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm all for just being able to get out and just experience the world, interact with people, that positive social interaction. But again, we live in a world now where we have screens, where we have technology, and we have Wi-Fi everywhere.
Everywhere. And it is, we're going straight from playing Kirby outside and running through the beaches and the fields and whatnot, and the world through a screen. Hayley, introduce this concept to us.
I just feel like a lot of us now are living through a screen because of time constraints, because of convenience. Children are growing up with a screen in hand. So one of the worst things I feel I've seen is a baby bouncer with an iPad holder.
Right, it came installed, ready to go.
Yeah, there was a few years ago. You're thinking about a newborn baby and a baby bouncer already with an iPad or some kind of gadget installed in front of them from birth. So these children are really, I think, missing out on those intimate connections with human beings because we're looking at the world through a screen.
And do you know what? Just to even follow on from that, how many times have you been out and they're just like a couple sitting next to each other, ignoring each other because they're staring at their phones? So the other extreme there as well.
Well, I went out. So when the children finished infant school or junior school and went to comp, they each had a night with my husband and I. So they had food and we'd gone out. I'm sure it was with my daughter's one. And behind us, there was a dad and a daughter. And she must have only been about 7. And she was trying to talk to everybody because he was on his phone all the time. He ate his food with his phone by his side and his eyes did not leave the screen. And I just think it is a wonderful place because you can go anywhere on a screen now. You can visit the world and not leave your house. But there is a real world out there.
And you know what? I'm just going to jump in again really quickly. You think about concerts. And just having that real life experience of seeing like Pink in concert in Cardiff the other night. People are watching a concert through a screen. So actually not being there but not being there, as opposed to I remember going and just experiencing it for the music, for the act, as opposed to through my camera.
Yeah. And it is a different stimulus because I was at that concert and on the most part, I watched it with my own eyes. I had to put my glasses on. I was a bit far away. But just being there and able to soak in that atmosphere and look around, use my peripheral vision, try and focus on the stage and see what's going on, you absorb it differently. And then there was one bit where she flies around and I was like, oh, I'm going to film this. And then even though I'm there, I'm focusing on the angle of the camera. And then I'm not actually experiencing any of it as a byproduct. And there seems to be a lot of instances where this is happening, where people are just kind of like, they automatically, oh, this is cool, phone. Let's have a look. It was like, well, surely you're more likely to absorb it and ingest it, to have the memory to recall on if you're there in the moment's entirety, is I suppose the point that I'm getting at. And like, I find the same with reading books and documents. I would rather a physical book to read. Convenience and space dictates otherwise, depending on where you're going and what you're doing. But that living vicariously and losing that periphery. And Hayley, going back to your point of the bouncer, the baby bouncer, people always compliment, oh, isn't your child alert? They're looking around, they're learning, and they're focusing, and they're seeing everything around them. They don't know what it is, but they learn that through looking. And are we actually are we negating development as a part of that?
Yeah, because I think it's dulling the whole experience. Like, as you say, when you're there, you feel the music in your chest, you feel everybody's energy, you feel everything. And then you go through a screen, and yes, you can feel the music, you can hear the music, you can see the atmosphere, but it's all dulled down. There's no real whole body experience. All your senses are engaged. And I don't think we are engaging all our senses while we're online and we're viewing the world through a screen.
No, it's the screen, the balance is tipping, isn't it? The screen was always something when it became, we stopped writing contracts and things down. The screen took over as a work tool predominantly. It was what you did to write essays. It was what you did to do, to do your tasks. And now the screen's become something that you do as part of daily life. And I mentioned earlier, like, there's definite positives to a screen, because I did have connection when I first moved to Cardiff through the likes of blogging and doing other bits and pieces, but it's taking over every single aspect now. Our alarm goes off, which is typically on our phone. You pick up your alarm to turn it off, well, as I'm on my phone, whoop, and then before you know it, I'm late. So we're actually losing our boundaries now because of our screen, Tammy.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the irony is, the bittersweet, I suppose, is that we're online now, and people will be watching through screens. But again, that's a positive as well. And again, we're not here to kind of say no. It's a negative thing. But you think about, more than an hour away from our phones, for example, and we might as well be declared off-grid. The anxiety that can cause by not being able to reach someone. Or be reached yourselves. And I think, it almost sparks maybe a new phone etiquette that we need now. I don't know.
Yeah, that anxiety, of course, on some devices, you've got Find My Friends, and you can keep track of your family and whatnot. Going back to previous conversation, when we went running around the fields and the beaches and the hedges, no one knew where we were, apart from be home before it gets dark. That was pretty much it.
Yeah, isn't that how it's supposed to be? Like, if my mother knew half the stuff I did as a teenager, like, she would not let me out ever again. And that's the fun of it. That's what is supposed to happen in your teens, isn't it? But we're so bombarded now with, you have to do it a particular way. You have to do the same as everybody else because that's what everybody else is doing. And I stand out. I don't like stuff like that. I don't like doing what everybody else is doing. I like to do what I want to do. But a big thing is FOMO, fear of missing out. And I'm really not bought into this concept. I understand it, but I think people feel it because it's pushed on social media all the time. Oh, you're suffering with FOMO because you're not going here, or your friends are going there, or whatever. And then the same with, if there's no pics, it didn't happen. That's forcing people to be on a screen taking photos, because if I don't take photos, nobody's going to believe me. Well, does it really matter? Does it really matter? Are you really going to miss out on anything if you don't go, or if you don't take the photo?
Yeah. And it kind of, that changes who you're prioritizing. Are you prioritizing yourself and your own experience, or are you prioritizing the need to tell someone else that you've done something? Because I would rather do something I enjoy and not share it and just have a lovely time, as opposed to, I kind of hinted that I was going to go to go walk the tallest thing in the Preselles, and I told them I was going to take a picture. So now I need to do it now to take the picture, when actually I can't be bothered. So like, who are we doing these things for? You may end up loving it, which would be great. That would be a win-win. But it's, we're doing a lot of things now just to prove to people on the screen, hey, look, I did that. And you might have only just done it for 3 seconds. Tammy.
But
yeah,
sorry,
Hayley.
I was going to
No,
jump
go
in.
on, Hayley. It's
No,
fine.
no, go on, Hayley.
That sometimes it's not just 3-second photo though, is it? It's somebody having to take and retake and retake and retake until they get the perfect photo.
With
So now
filters.
you've spent 3 hours taking a photo and it's time to go home.
and you haven't absorbed the
No.
surroundings that you're in anyway. Tammy.
There is that kind of like, I do like to play the devil's advocate, so I'm going to come in there really
Do
quick.
it.
But I think, we've got that romantic idea that without smartphones, we'd all be sat in cafes and restaurants, just chatting to complete strangers. But it's not the case. And, I'm going to ask the question, do we remember newspapers and magazines? We used to use them as ways of distracting ourselves in places such as cafes, so we wouldn't have to talk to other people. So it's kind of an extension is what there's always been ways of distracting, and I'm off on a tangent slightly from photos, but I do think we don't want to get tied up in that kind of romantic idea that without screens we would just chat and interact with complete strangers.
No,
I'd love to see an experiment on that, because I think you would. I think we're really missing that, bridging that gap between youngsters and elderly people just sitting at the bus stop because everybody's on their phone. Whereas before there would have been maybe a small conversation where just one piece of knowledge would have been given in that one conversation. So I would love to see an experiment done on that, like a social experiment. Maybe we should do one.
We should do one.
And it's starting here now.
Yeah, if you're at a bus stop, you need to put your phone down and talk to the person next to you and just see what kind of interaction you get. Bus stops are the thing which I observe the most, particularly as one at the bottom of the high street in Haverfordwest, towards the end of school, because that bus stop between 3 and 4 has got all generations waiting to go home, to go up the high street. And the bus stop itself is no more than about 3 meters. And yet the bus stop you'd be forgiven is the length of a train platform. The distance that people give themselves to not have to talk to the person next to them is quite remarkable. And they're not always on their phone as a distraction. And going back to Tammy's point, I was quite a shy, retiring young person growing up. And if I found myself in a situation where I was next to someone else, I'm not the kind of person to strike up a conversation. And for that reason, I do miss the terribly outdated magazines you used to find on coffee tables in waiting rooms. And just quickly, I'll pick this up. Oh, thank goodness there's a crossword. I didn't know how to do a crossword, but at least I could pretend. So my personality at that point was always to be like, I can't talk to strangers. I don't know what to do. I'm not very good at small talk, even though I'm not the best at small talk. But yeah, to Tammy's point there, that looking for something else to distract you and driving past that bus stop makes me laugh so much. And I'm thinking, if only you, and I kind of look back at it on myself, where it's like, if only I struck up more conversations when I was growing up, what wonderful things I might have learned. And there's been the odd occasion where I've been walking when I lived in Cardiff, a sit down with your fish and chips on Penarth Pier, whatever it might be, and then someone just pops up next to you, completely different generation, and it might be as innocuous as, oh, it's a nice day today, isn't it? And all of us, oh yeah, it's lovely, thank you. And if you're feeling brave, you might offer a chip. And then it's like, oh, so what are you doing here? I was like, oh, well, I came down because so and so has had a birthday, and they've been in the pavilion, and all of a sudden you find this wonderful life that you wouldn't have had, and you get that face-to-face connection, because we can have these connections over Twitter, over Facebook. We can do all of that, but you don't feel it. Hayley.
Oh.
It's not the same, is it? It really isn't. And it's wonderful. If social media is an amazing tool, it's not life though. So that personal connection, and I work with people online, I work with people in person, and my favorite interaction is in person, because you get to feel the energy, you get to see all the body language, you get to understand a lot more about the person by that visual sort of, and that presence. And I think, again, if children are more used to being online, they're going to miss out, or they're going to dull the sense of being with people, which is going to make them uncomfortable. We have a knock-on effect, don't we? Were you uncomfortable as a child because that's your personality? Had you had more interactions with people, would that have changed? You know, practice makes perfect. But I just think we need that. We are human beings and we need physical connection. We need to be in the room with people.
Do you know what? I agree. I was just gonna say, just before you said that, about just linking it back into what we spoke about in the previous section, is that you know, putting yourselves in those situations where you can have that inconsequential language, where you can just go, oh, weather's rubbish today, and just start those you know, those conversations, whether it's, you know, a couple of minutes or you know a bit longer. But again, like you say, if you're not practicing that, you might just feel awkward in those situations. Remove yourself from those situations, distract yourself in those situations. So again, yeah, it all is that vicious circle.
Yeah.
I had a
And
conversation with a guy last week, and my daughter passed a test last week, and I had to go, and we went up to college, and I was walking around town, and I ended up in Tesco's in the cafe, and there was this old man on his scooter, and he said to me, it's really nice to get out, he said, because my wife locks me in the shed when it's really warm. She locks me in the shed overnight, so she let me out this morning. Well, I was howling, right? And we had that little quick interaction while we were purchasing, went to sit apart, met again on the way out, and had the same sort of, he said, I was only joking, man, she doesn't lock me in the shed. And I said, it's fine, I get it. But how nice is that? Like, I would say he was probably in his 70s, 80s. But it was fun. And I laughed. I chuckled as I walked down the road to go meet my daughter. It was lovely.
And Tammy's just called it inconsequential moments. And we think they are at the time, but you leave still chuckling. You leave with that sense of connection. You leave with that sense of warmth, all because of complete chance. And then we can go into some real ethereal conversations now about, I was meant to see that person. I was meant to have this moment with this person to make me think about the wild and wonderful world around us. And if that's your bag, you go for it. But otherwise, in its minute form, it's someone put a smile on my face today. I felt connection with someone. I felt part of something. I felt I was in that moment. We've got Rise to Shine with us. Great topic. I'm interested to know what your thoughts are, and if you've got any experience with this about living world through a screen. And Helen Marie is also with us as well, talking about children viewing the world through a screen. I'm sure it happens with pets too. Currently have you on Facebook, and Minnie, the pup, is sat on my lap, looking at the screen, watching and listening to you, laughing, crying emojis. I wonder what the dog is getting out of this conversation at the moment. Dogs, God, talking of dogs and getting connections in the real world, if you want a stranger to come up and say hello to you, get a cute dog. Because you will be inundated, and what you thought would be a brisk 10-minute walk is not going to be. And yet you're connecting with people in a community that you didn't know existed. So yeah, interested to hear your thoughts on this. We are going to be moving and looking at supporting mental health and well-being for children and teens. Tammy loves playing devil's advocate, looking at screens. We've talked about how it can take us away from the real world. It can stop us from being bored. But just to go back to that point about families who live away. So I've got a sister who's in Canada. The screen is the gateway into their world. Tammy, it is actually something, if used in moderation, shall we say, is actually really effective.
Yeah, absolutely. There's no escaping it. Technology, it does shrink the miles. From like the infancy where, you started off with Skype, decades ago, to where, you can just FaceTime now. And it's like you're in the same room with that person. And when we talk about screens, for many, and it's an expectation, you think in the professional world, as well as socially, so that you can be contacted. Many jobs do want you to be accessible. So we do need that screen time as well. So for all kind of, the negatives, there are positives, but it's finding like a good harmony. And we go back to, people stopping, when you've got a dog and just having that chat. It becomes a vehicle to actually just give someone permission to just say something nice to someone, hello or morning or that's lovely, just to start those interactions. So we need that so much too.
Yeah, Helen Marie's back with a similar experience of those small interactions. Similar experience in Tesco. An elderly gentleman was looking at the strawberries, and I said, "Don't take all the best ones now." His face changed, and he giggled. We had a brief chat and walked away. We saw each other a few times in the aisles and swapped shopping tips. For all I know, I might have been the only person he had a physical conversation with that day, and that's something that we can't take for granted as well, Hayley, in this day and age, that actually the screen has become a full substitute for real life interaction.
Yeah, for some people, you think that maybe they're only seeing people through a screen or not seeing people for days on end. And which is why I think having a laugh with somebody and striking up a conversation about the weather or whatever that is, I often look for something to compliment people on. So if I see them on their own and they're looking a bit sad, or I love to compliment people because it's amazing what that little thing can do, that little interaction, that little second that didn't cost you anything, but made somebody's day. And one of the things I kind of wanted to bring up on this one was the immediate gratification thing. You can do that for people in person with that one compliment. It's immediate gratification. And yet we are searching for that constantly through social media. And yet I think it's more powerful in real life.
Yeah. On that point as well, we're always looking for the gratification towards us, but actually giving is actually far more powerful. If you can compliment someone and you can and mean it, or you can have that moment and mean it, you can walk away and you feel like a superhero, like superhuman. It's like, gosh, I love that I was in that interaction. Whereas if we're constantly trying to validate ourselves through strangers who don't know who we are, then we're just kind of in a bit of a hole, a bit of a pit.
Yeah, absolutely.
It becomes that kind of like it's infectious, just by you're kind of like becoming your own, for want of a better description or analogy, you become your own director of happiness. I'm giving someone else happiness, and hopefully that will then spread, and they'll give someone else that happiness, that compliment, or by making someone feel good, or just acknowledging them, they'll do the same to someone else. It becomes that ripple effect as well.
Yeah. And then just we talked about COVID and young people and living life on screen, and then we talked about body language and being with the people that they were talking with. I was actually useless at joining all the Zoom parties, and it's because a bit like you two, my whole life has been predicated on being with people in the room and reading those non-verbal cues, and I just could not relate to anyone through a box. I found it really difficult on the regularity that lockdown required it. I know that if you're regulars to PWR Radio, I talked to a lot of the guests on Zoom. I'm talking to Hayley and Tammy right now on our screen here. So all I'm seeing is head and shoulders. No idea how tall Hayley is. For all I know, she's 7'8" and is a basketball whiz. But I found it really difficult over that period to relate. And even now, there will be periods where I just can't. It's not I can't. I just find it difficult to try and engage in those conversations and those long-winded ones. So there will be periods of time where you might not hear from me because it's just too much. And I don't know where I am. I don't know where I stand. I can't remember the last time I heard your voice. I don't know what your inflection is. I don't know if you lift the end of your words, if there's an R on it. And I find them really difficult to manage then. And well, we're going to come back actually looking at supporting mental health and well-being for young people, because we started off talking about who am I in 2024 for young people. We're talking about the world through screens, and we're going to dive deep now into some of the support mechanisms that are out there. But as we did with part one, and please do give us information If you're listening to this now and you're thinking, oh, well, actually, here's how I overcome that, please do let us know. You can call or WhatsApp on 01437 764455. You can use the PWR app. You can email studio@pursradio.com. You can comment live on the various social medias that we're on at the moment. Text 60777. Start your message with PWR. Text is charged at your standard network rate. Or drop us a message on the socials with your hints and tips and advice. So we're going to dive deep into this in a moment. But headline, looking at screens. Tammy, starting with you, what kind of advice would you give at this beginning section?
To actually have that healthy balance, as a whole, our dependence on screens isn't going to go away. So we need to be mindful of that, and to help ourselves. Like everything, it's about just not abusing it. So having those positive interactions, that boundaries, factual information, and positive networks with real people.
Hayley.
Find the balance that suits you. Find the balance of real interactions in the real world and interactions online. Don't be pulled into one more than the other. Find a great balance where you get that personal touch with people, but you also get that sort of dulled sense online as well. Maybe that's the wrong way to describe it, but yeah, I think there's a balance to be had. Enjoy both, but be safe.
Enjoy both. Be safe. We're going to take another moment, still to come on the show, of course. It's Carers Week this week. Tammy and I had a catch up about this last week, so we're gonna play that for you. But also, Tammy, just remind us, who is it that you were having chats with just the other week as well?
I caught up with Great Britain Olympian swimmer Sharon Davis, and we had a great conversation about how to do gentle exercise as you're getting older.
Fantastic. I'm just thinking, because we've got quite an audience built up here. What do we? I'm asking you live on the radio. Do you want to take a moment and have a song, take stock, and start again, or are you happy just to plow on forward?
Happy to go.
Happy to plow on.
Happy to plow on. I'm going to change the banner that we've got on screen then, because at the minute it's saying the world through a screen. We're going to change this now to supporting the mental health and well-being of young people. Hayley, I'm going to ask you to kick us off for this one.
So I've just come across, I was just looking online, I've just come across an Open University workshop program for any parents who are looking to support their own children's well-being, which is a wonderful resource if you're looking for sort of guidance on it. And it's quite a short course as well, it's not a long course. But for me, supporting the well-being of children, I'm going to go in a really different direction, because one of the things that I find that works really, really well with families I work with and with children and teens, or young people as they call them now, is asking different types of questions. So a lot of parents want to ask their children, what's the matter? Why do you feel like that? When you start to ask different questions, they start to think in a different way. So let's say, for example, we're talking about something going on in school and the child is refusing to go to school. Rather than, why don't you want to go to school? Try something along the lines of, what is it that's stopping you from going into school? Now, they're the same question, right? But your brain will work differently when you ask that different question. Why is quite a defensive, aggressive question. What is a gentler question, and your brain starts to go, so what is stopping me? So as you teach your children those skills, they start to do it for themselves, and they start to be able to look after their own mental health and well-being by asking those different questions.
I love that. Language is so important. Tammy, I'm going to come to you in just a second. Apollo is on Instagram live with us. First of all, big love and happy birthday for the other day. Pembroke Hapis, I'm sure he wants to hear some Welsh as well. Lovely seeing you through my screen right now. But to add to the conversation, I feel like my life is much happier and less distracted when I give myself at least the first hour of my day without any screen time. We're gonna circle back to that. I wanted to catch him because Instagram's quite a transient portal at the moment. But Tammy, the power of language first and foremost, to build on what Hayley said there.
Well, yeah, absolutely. And I do like the way, of reframing questions and making a teen think in a different way. I think the other thing when we think about, young people's mental health, it's a complex issue. So recognizing the red flags as well. Children, young people may not always be able to articulate their feelings clearly. And their kind of like mental health struggles could be considered typical teenager behavior. So again, it's about just looking for indicators and noticing that something is a bit deeper. So again, just being mindful of your child and just recognizing the red flags, but also, as Hayley said, reframing questions.
There is a risk there, actually. Typical teenage behavior. It's very easy as a grown-up to be like, oh, that's just how they are, when actually they haven't built the resource yet to communicate it. And building on what we've already been talking about, if they're not socializing and they're not going through conflict and things like that, then how would they know to talk about it? Hayley, this links actually the 2 points together, that we're not actually getting an outcome because they don't know how.
But this is where we need to teach the skills, isn't it? Of understanding who you are, what your needs are, what you're looking for, and being able to communicate it. And I think that we've kind of lost sight of passing those skills on. And I'm not saying, like, my parents made loads of mistakes, right? As I've made loads of mistakes with my children. But we can learn skills to pass those skills on so children can communicate. They can start to understand something doesn't feel right and I need some help. So they can reach out and ask somebody that they trust. And I think that's an important skill to learn.
Yeah, I agree. I think talking about, mental health, it doesn't have to be daunting, at the heart of it, it's about having that, understanding, the empathy, having action. It's about creating an environment where someone feels safe to share their feelings without judgment. And I say someone because, it doesn't necessarily have to be. I know we're talking predominantly about children and young people, but, it can be adults, it's everyone. And asking those open-ended questions, as Hayley said at the start, active listening. And, as hard as it is, just resisting that urge to offer kind of like solutions immediately.
Yeah. There, certainly growing up, there is that tendency that a children's problem isn't worth listening to because it's, on the grand scheme of things, it's very small to us as people that have grown up and have experienced more. But actually, an issue that's causing anxiety for a young person, that is their world, that is their focus. And to not come in with judgment and a solution straight away, it can actually really help a young person open up and talk about the thing which is having that overwhelming impact on their life at that time. It's very easy to just diminish their thoughts, being like, you'll get over it. It's like, but I'm in it at the moment.
Yeah, and I think that it's really hard for like a guardian or parent or carer, because it's so natural that you want to fix it. And I'll use that in inverted commas. You want to fix, when your child is hurting, emotionally hurting. But sometimes, in my opinion, just allowing that young person to be heard is the most powerful support at that moment for them.
And allowing them to feel as well, allowing them to giving them permission, because they don't know how to do it themselves yet, but teaching them how to give themselves permission to feel what they're feeling. Okay, so sometimes they don't behave the way that they need to behave because they're angry or whatever else, but giving them permission to feel anger and to be angry when something is not going the right way, that's great. And then teach them how to respond when anger is an emotion. Teach them that it's okay to be sad. You know, we're in a society now where you start talking about uncomfortable emotions and people will tell you to stop. They may not say it outright. Their body language will shift. Their facial expression will shift. Their eye contact will change. So let's get comfortable speaking about emotions and feeling emotions and allowing others to feel emotions as well.
Yeah, and I think, sorry, just really quickly, just while, you've said that, just feeling that emotion, it's also really important to remind, everyone that stress is part of life as well. We can have that good stress that can motivate people, young people to study for a test, for example. That nervous adrenaline when you have to public speak as an adult, as well as the negative stress. Where you have that overwhelming feeling of anxiety. So again, it's we have to be mindful that stress, is part of life.
Yeah, there's something quite wonderful about being left to sit in your own discomfort and to actually discover why you're feeling uncomfortable in the first place, because it does make the cogs turn a little bit and be like, well, why am I feeling like this? And if you're the person that sat with them in their discomfort and allowing them that time and that space to grow, we're actually really logical and we're very clever, and we can actually unpick what's uncomfortable about it. And you might not get to the uncomfortableness of the actual issue on the first time round. The discomfort might come from is because I'm sat here talking to you and my relationship with you does not revolve around this. So I'm uncomfortable because I don't know how much I can share with you. And that's not a disrespectful thing. We've never done this before. But having those baby steps and getting comfortable with that uncomfortable and teasing out why you're talking about things and why you're feeling certain things is going to help in the long run if we can have those types of conversations now. Hayley.
Yeah, definitely. Conversations are so key, aren't they? And we're not having conversations now because we're all on our phones. We our meal times are no phone zones. They do not come to the table. There might be occasions when, if I'm waiting for something, I might have the phone. But even I get scolded by the kids, and they'll say, years ago we used to do there would be consequences for certain behaviours, and burping was one of them. Burping at the table was one of them. And I had to go and sit on the step for 36 minutes because I burped at the table, and that was the rule. You have to sit for every minute of your life. You sit on the step. 36 minutes when food went cold. But it taught the children that I was willing to do what I was putting them through. And we'd had conversations about it. We discussed that it was unacceptable. And those are the kinds of things when you don't have those conversations with children. I don't know if you've seen Gentle Parenting, right? I'm not a complete fan. I understand the concept. But you see parents who are gentle parenting, who are not putting boundaries in place, who are not really communicating with their children, they're letting their children choose what life is like. Then they get to 14, 15, 16, and these are big children now. They're not, they're big boys, teenagers, big girls, teenagers, and they do not know how to be in their own world because they haven't had a small enough world to feel safe in to grow. So they get to that age where there is no respect for parents. And that's our role, is to teach them that the world isn't too big. If we give them boundaries, we make the world small enough for them to develop, then we widen it a little bit, and we widen it, and we widen it, and we widen it until they are comfortable in the big wide world. But when you don't do that for them, there's no respect, and they struggle with being in that world, and they'll struggle with their mental health, they'll struggle with their well-being.
Yeah, Tammy, it feels like that whole that realm of setting boundaries is, oh no, that's really oppressive, which means that you're going to damage mental health in the long run. But actually, it's tapering the speed of which you need to learn about the big wide world, because there's a lot to learn. So actually, on Hayley's point there, it can be beneficial. I know that I certainly had boundaries growing up, and I feel that I'm more rounded because of it. Tammy, what are your thoughts and experiences?
No, I agree. I agree with everything that Hayley said there about having those boundaries. And again, you can say that to the real world, and again to bring it back to what we were talking about, the virtual world as well, having our boundaries in place, and just having those incremental growth as things expand as people get older. So yeah, absolutely, I agree with everything that Hayley shared there.
Yeah, we've shared some resources in the comments. I don't know how clearly they've come out on the different various platforms that we're sharing at the moment. But Hayley, give us a bit of insight as to some of these resources that we've shared.
So Young Minds, I think, is the top. Oh no, the Open University is the top one. That is a little course, a short course for parents who want to support their well-being, their children's well-being. There'll be a few of those different versions as well. There's a lot of different. There's Future Learn is another platform. Udemy is another platform if you want to go and search there. Then there's Young Minds, which is got lots of resources for supporting well-being of children. Trying to look at what I've got. Mind is another one. They have some resources for 11 to 18-year-olds. And then mentalhealth.org.uk, they're another source of resources to support children as well. I had a blog, but I couldn't find the link of my blog. If I can find it, I'll send it out and you can pop it on the social media platform.
Amazing.
In time.
Yeah, we'll share that. We've had a message come in. Not going to mention any names on this one. My child was having difficulty going to school, saying that they can't do things and they don't understand, and they didn't want to go to school. And when that conversation came up, the anxiety grew, and it wouldn't get out of bed and was crying and really emotional. And the question was, why won't you go in? And it escalated the whole situation again. And it's really testing the limits of the relationship between the older person and the young person there. And again, it's just to reiterate that point of that why question, Hayley, and how substituting that with a what's happening or something along those lines to soften that question could actually develop the conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. Something like, what's going on for you? Have you experienced something in school? Is there something that's making you feel like you can't go into school? They're so different in questions, and your brain starts to go, is there something? And I think it's really underestimated that the type of question you ask will produce the type of answer. So if you can change those questions to be less sort of accusatory, because the why questions, many years ago, I went to do a counselling course on rage, and there was another counsellor then. She said she'd asked her friend why her friend was divorcing her husband, and a few weeks went by, and her friend said, it was like you slapped me across the face because it felt like you were blaming me. And that really resonated with me, because I don't like the why question. So if we can change it to, what can I do to help you go to school? What do you need for you to be able to go to school? What do you need to do for you to be able to go to school? All these questions offer a different mind space and a different mindset, rather than, why can't you get out of bed? Why can't you go to school? It's harsh, it's hard. And I'm not judging, I've done it myself. Not a judgment, just an observation and a tool that can change the conversation for you with your children.
Yeah. And then, Tammy, it becomes a team sport. Then it becomes something that you work on together, that you can progress together, and it becomes something that you can reflect back on and actually determine the direction in which you're going.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, even just coming back to that power of language. And that's what it is. It's about using the right kind of wording, And it is that kind of like that team exercise. It is working together. And again, it's to find that solution. So it's not a case of where you don't want to be. It's how do we get there? It's what the goal is. So it is working in the right direction, as opposed to dwelling why you're not doing something or why you're behaving in a certain way. And it comes, again, power of language. Why?
Yeah, that power of language working together. It's coming up to 10:30 already, and we still got to catch up with Sharon. We're going to go from young people to a conversation about creaky knees, Tammy.
Yes, absolutely. So Sharon Davis, Olympian, obviously wear and tear over her kind of career. Started to get osteoarthritis. But resisted the surgery route and was fortunate enough to be able to get alternative treatment, which has led her to kind of go back 18 months down the line, able to be physical every day, enjoy her grandchildren, and a very informative conversation, because I don't want to resign myself to get older and not be able to do things. I don't want to sign up to that yet. So I want to be able to, carry on being active as I get older. So a very good interview.
Yeah, so stick around for that one. That's Tammy chatting to Sharon, and then we're going to replay an interview that we did last week about the Cancer Support West Wales service, which Tammy is also a pivotal figure in. So stick around for that one. Hayley, we've been talking about young people. We've been talking about screens. We've been talking about identity. If you were to wrap up this evening's main topics for this evening, what would you say, and what would be your advice to those that might be in the throngs of trying to figure it out from a young person's perspective, based on the conversations you've had with young people, but also from the grown-ups' perspective of trying to navigate this technological world, which is still quite alien to a lot of people?
So I think for the older generation, let's remember how tough it is to grow up in a world where social media is a thing. Well, it's not a thing, it's the thing. And as much as every generation will say, my generation growing up was harder, I think life is really tough. And if we remember that and approach our teens and our children with different questions, you can change the outcome of that conversation, and you can change the outcome for your child and your young person. As a young person, I would say, and this probably goes for everybody actually, you are the most important person in your world. So look after yourself in the best way. Put yourself first, not in a selfish way, but in a self-care way. Because I have worked with people who will not put their phones down until their friends are asleep. They're certain their friends are asleep at 3 o'clock in the morning, and they're getting up then at 6, just to be awake for their friends again. So put yourself first and be kind to yourself.
Sometimes that doesn't always work out, and we do need additional support to help us get through our own mental health. Next month on Healthy Minds, Better Lives, the date for your diary, we're going to be back on Thursday, the 11th of July. If you blink, we'll be there in no time at all, because that seems to be the pace of which this year is going.
Yes.
And we're actually going to be joined by some of the members from the NHS 111 Option 2 team, which is the dedicated mental health line. Tammy, I don't know if you've had any clients that have actively used it, and then to you, Hayley, afterwards.
No, I haven't, not personally, but I know it's a very valuable service that is available to everyone.
Yeah, Hayley, what about you?
There's lots of different services. I think you've got to find one that fits you. Haven't had much to do with a lot of the services recently. When I worked for Women's Aid, I was involved with a lot more services. I'm not really involved in many services now. But ask questions as well. If you're looking for services, go and ask questions to make sure they are the right service for you.
Yeah, there are lots. We've got the resources that Hayley shared in the comments as well. Hayley's going to try and find a blog post so we can share that on the social media and on the Healthy Minds page on the website as well. Here in Pembrokeshire, we've got Pembrokeshire Mind. There's lots of other avenues that we can explore. And as Hayley just said, mental health can be as individual as the individual that we are. So an interaction that we have with one person in an organization might be completely different with a different person in the same organization. So don't just think, oh, well, I went to that place and it didn't work. Ask to see someone else, because that's okay too, Hayley.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you got to find the right person for you, because otherwise it's not going to work. You're not going to open up to somebody you don't connect with. So we've talked about connection all along tonight, haven't we? And if you're seeking support from professionals, that connection is key.
Connection is key. Tammy, we started off kind of talking about connection. Connection is key. I love connecting with you two once a month here on Healthy Minds, Better Lives. And thank you for your connections, everyone that's tuned in, whether it's been on the comments. We've had Helen Marie with us. We had Rise to Shine with us. Thank you to those on Instagram who have never seen this show before. Apollo got in touch saying about how he goes that hour with no screen time in the morning to set himself up for the day, and which is very difficult. So fair play to Apollo, and I hope he enjoyed his birthday last week as well. We will be back on the 11th of July, but coming up next, as Tammy just mentioned, we're going to be hearing from an Olympic year about growing old and about what we can do to stave off feeling old and to keep active and to keep us, because we haven't even talked about the physical side of mental health in this episode. It's all very much been about sedentary lifestyles, just staring at a phone. But there is a link there as well, Hayley.
Yeah, definitely. You know, I think I've got a list of stuff that I'd written down about for tonight. And emotional and mental health is just one side of it. You've got your physical health. You've got, even with children, financial health, social health, as in, you know, making sure that they understand about friendships, healthy relationships, that kind of stuff. I've also got social media health and nutrition. So those are all things that we need to be good at to support our mental health and our well-being.
Love that. Thank you so much. Sharon Davis chatting to Tammy is up next. It's not long gone 10:30. Keep your comments coming in. Keep using the WhatsApp number 01437 76 4455, and particularly use email studio@purewestradio.com. If there's a topic that you want us to consider and do a bit of research on, maybe get a guest on that might be pertinent to you, then please let us know. We would love to answer your questions and your thoughts and your queries. Studio@purewestradio.com is what you need. We'll put some social media posts up in the meantime as well. We want to encourage the conversation without judgment. We want to listen, and we want to find out where you're coming from, and we want to find out what options there are for the next steps to try and improve our mental and our physical health as best as we can. For this evening, though, Sharon's up next. Hayley, Tammy, thank you so much again for a really insightful, enjoyable evening, talking all things mental health here on the Health Minds Better Lives.
Thank you, and see you next month.